Shawn Ford, Purchase Line Superintendent, joins us. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Mr. Ford, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Marino.
It's good to have you with us here today. I was talking to Michael Minnick, the principal at Indiana Junior High last hour, and I asked him, some school districts are able to go fully virtual, some school districts just out and out closed, and I asked if that was a result of teachers not being able to get into the building because they have to drive through the snow as well, and if that played into the decision, and he said it did. Now, Purchase Line, you guys are able, and you announced earlier this year that where possible you would go all virtual, and you're able to do that now. Have issues with that, or is everything going well?
Yeah, we made that decision, I believe, sometime in late November, early December, that we felt the capability was we were able to do the virtual. I'm not going to say it's without. It's not a perfect system, and we'd much rather have our students in school. But we looked at all the factors, and we're happy with it. Our teachers have gotten credit to them. They've really improved at virtual instruction. You figure we're almost a year into this, coming up in March, and from where we were to where we are, we're satisfied. Like I said, our preference is to have students in the building, but we also, we're able to, by having the virtual days, we're able to keep the Easter break in there. We're still shooting for a June 4th graduation, and so you start weighing those, bringing students back at those times. How much more do you gain of bringing students back? So, and everybody looks at that a little different, and so that was a decision that the board and the administrative team here made in consultation with our teachers, and we felt comfortable with it.
Yeah, the way you say that, it's interesting because you think back to things that you would not have been able to say a year ago that you can say now, and we're able to go full virtual is a line that you could not have used last year at this time, but that's how quickly things changed, isn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We've got, probably one of the biggest aspects that I think I even remember talking to you on the radio is just the capability, the remote access and access, even with the power packs that we've given out and some of those that we just have so much better opportunities. And the other thing is we kind of plan for that now. We know that in advance, and so we've gone to the one-to-one where our students, have the devices. They take them home every night. Last year at this time, we didn't even have one-to-one completely, and all the devices stayed in school. So it's been a kind of a total transformation on that. So absolutely.
Yeah, and you as a superintendent, of course, you're in constant contact with other superintendents here in Indiana County, but with superintendents really through your organizational ties and different associations you belong to, you're able to keep up on the latest trends. And I would guess that's a pretty good resource for you. When something new comes along and other superintendents are able to weigh in and give feedback on it, you would have a pretty good chance to turn that around and say, yeah, this is something we could use here at Purchase Line, or it doesn't sound like it would be a good fit.
Absolutely. The local, like I think I've shared before here, is that we are constantly bouncing ideas, and we were on the phone at 5:10 this morning discussing, and of course we hit up our transportation providers and hear from the county supervisors of what the roads look like, and everything from that to the latest in technology. I'm part of the Superintendent Academy, so not only do I have our local group, it's been interesting to hear from 40 superintendents throughout the state on some of the things they're doing, and we've taken a couple ideas, from them. We're looking at some different options even in the next year, just based on some of those conversations I have with superintendents, both locally and throughout the state.
Tell me about that organization. I've not heard of that before.
Well, the Superintendent Academy was a group when Secretary Rivera was here. That was an initiative, and so they take 35 to 40 superintendents every year, and we go through a kind of a year-long. We work together, and then we come up with a capstone project at the end where we do kind of a system change within our school. One of my mentors, Mr. Vukovic, had gone through an earlier class. I think Mr. Weimer might have also gone through that class. Don't hold me to that, but so it's just it's a way to professional development for the superintendents, and then it ends with like a capstone project. Now ours has been unique. We were supposed to be done, but the pandemic has pushed ours to about a year and a half scenario. So
yeah, we understand why. Let's get into the hallways there at Purchase Line, and I want to go to the elementary school because we tend to focus upon the high school
sure.
when there's probably some pretty neat things happening at the elementary school as well. And it doesn't all have to do with the pandemic. It's interesting and I know pretty exciting to you as a superintendent to see the way these kids have handled all the situations for this year. And it really seems from the COVID numbers we're getting all across Indiana County that they've really adapted and they've just gotten into the swing of academics this year. And would that be the case at Purchase Line?
It's great having our students back, and we're back 4 days, and we have a date out there of March 22nd that we intend to be back full 5 days at both buildings. That's a goal we established last night at the board meeting, so I'll share that this morning. But it's been great, and our motto here of the students coming back is kind of re-engaging, rebuilding those relationships, re-engaging that learning process, and our teachers have done that. And there's a lot of really positives coming out of that, and there's some tough times too. We're still dealing with that whole social, emotional, and some of the issues, and these kids have been through a lot, and in some ways you go back in history and you look at those events that have happened in the United States over the years, and kids have had to learn adaptability, flexibility, all those life skills, 21st century skills, and we're seeing that in our kids, and we're seeing that in our staff, and so it's really great to have them back. Just kind of that re-engagement process, if you will. That's been our focus with them coming back, really honing in on that relationship building and that caring adult working with our kids. That's been our focus, Todd.
I want to get into the high school building next. I recall back when I was in school, when the presidential elections came up, there was good-natured elections, fake elections run within the student body to choose presidents and to choose senators and things of that nature. It's seems to be a much more serious thing these days than it ever was back then. And kids react to things that are happening on the local level, but also on the national level. And certainly during this past year, the pandemic, the riots that happened in this country, the various tensions that are out there in society, and then the presidential election. Is that something that you've noticed has had an effect on students within Purchase Line schools?
Yes, for sure. We try to number one, we try to focus and have shared with our educators about taking a really unbiased look to talk about not getting into the political fray of red or blue, but more this is how our country operates. This is the democratic process. But yeah, definitely high emotions. We've seen some of that in the school. We've tried to remain very unbiased though, and do that in an approach that's like I said, to stay out of the political landscape per se, but yet it's still very, very important that we teach the democratic process, that we teach that our right, those First Amendment rights, and so it's a fine line you walk there, especially with all the news coverage and the media coverage and everything. So that's been challenging at times, but overall, I think we're satisfied and we're real happy with how our teachers, especially like our social studies teachers, definitely talked about that, and it was definitely a talk. I haven't heard as much here since post-election as we did leading up to that, for sure.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me how civics makes its way into the classrooms and into the hallways. Then afterwards, people start talking about things, and
right.
And I'm sure that in many cases they're reflecting the attitudes of their parents. In that the parents are saying, "I wish somebody would start acting like a grown-up."
Right.
In all of this,
right.
and the kids see that, and they take lessons from that, and so if you're able to focus their attention where it should be, and train them properly about the role of a citizen in the United States, that's a pretty good thing. All right, so we're heading into the Well, the spring will be here not so long from now, today's snowstorm notwithstanding. Things within Purchase Line on track, and it sounds like you guys are rolling where you need to be.
We're starting to really look at the planning for next year, I said the other day, I shared at the board a week ago, we're kind of re-engaging where we were pre-COVID and looking at some of our initiatives and what we were doing. Now we've got to include what we've learned and some of the issues that have arisen during COVID, and we've got to kind of put together now, start planning for next school year, as far as even we're having to approve a cyber school for next school year. We still have a number of students in full remote learning, so now that's going to be a big project here that we're hoping to get approved in the next couple months. And then we're, looking at, how do we set that up? That's probably one of the most immediate needs we're working on, in addition to, thinking about schedules and having students pick classes. And we had transitioned to remote learning this year and a platform. So a lot of planning work, Todd, right now. That's kind of our big focus. We started early December, and we're still continuing that at this time.
Well, that's interesting to me because there are other school districts that have their own cyber academies, and it really is a great way for the future for school districts. And it's a necessary thing, I think, for school districts, too. Practically every school district is going to be forced to do something in those, either by cooperative with some other school district in the area or on their own, and that's a trend that is just going to continue.
That's that's probably the number one thing that I see long term coming out of COVID. We get past the immediate needs, and I don't want to discount those immediate needs because they're real. But the technological change of what classrooms are going to look like into the future, from a blended learning, utilization of machine technology. And then how does that play into kids that may want to take classes that we may not offer? Because kind of the veil's been lifted on the ability of utilizing technology for classes. And so those are all discussions we're having. And the key word that I keep throwing out there is we have to be flexible. And we're going to have to meet kids where they're at, where they want to be. And so it's really changed. COVID is really going to have an impact in education into the future. We call it an innovative learning system moving forward, and that's kind of, we're trying to define that and what that looks like going forward. So it's an exciting process, but it's also, change process is never easy, but I think that we have to do it. So.
Yeah, the Cyber Academy idea was something that was coming anyway, and the pandemic pandemic sort of kicked it in the butt and got it moving really fast now. Shawn Ford, he is the superintendent of the Purchase Line School District, joining us this morning. We got to expand that conversation in the future, Shawn. But for now, we're out of time. Thanks for being with us.
Have a great day.
You too. We'll see you. You too. We'll see you.